Hey guys, how you doing? Well, I got invited back to Crocktober 2024 by Jeni over at Jeni Scratch My Kitchen and Tony over at Kettle Kitchen. And I got to thinking, well, we've kind of seen everybody make one-pot meals and stews and sweets and desserts and all of that kind of stuff in the crockpot. But has anyone actually seen anyone make cheese before? Let's get into it! I've been away for a while, and but I've been doing stuff as well, and part of that has been learning how to make cheeses, and I've ended up with rather a lot of whey. In fact, on this particular occasion, I have got myself a grand total of about 8 litres, which is about 4 gallons of whey. So I decided I wanted to do something with it, and I wanted to do something useful that would add to our pantry. Okay, now as you guys have seen, I've just tipped that straight into what I could. I filled up the crock pot. Okay, I filled it up, I put it on high, I've taken the lid off, and I've let that whey evaporate halfway down. And then I've poured some more in, and we're going to continue this process. Now this process took me 2 days. And you know I'm only going to do it for you guys, right? Because, quite frankly, 2 days for one thing is, unless we're thrown back to the Stone Age, it's not something I'm going to do on the regular, okay? So at this point, it's been cooking for about 4 hours. So a little bit longer than that. At about this point, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As you can hear, Nanny comes home in the background. I've tried to make it as clean as possible. So and I started this process at 10 o'clock in the morning, so yeah, at this point we've been going for about 5 hours, and my main goal with what was happening on day one was to get as much of the whey cooked off as possible to where we only had 1 pot of it left, and I didn't have any more pots and bowls and jars and all of that stuff of whey still around. And so that's what I did. Now honestly, this process is incredibly simple. It is. It literally is. I mean, you can't get much simpler than this. It's get your whey, put it in the slow cooker, turn it on high, take the lid off and let it evaporate. And go and stir it occasionally. Keep an eye on it. Okay, that's literally all there is to it until we get to where it starts to a little bit further down the track. Okay, but you do want to stir it a little bit because it does start to because there are a lot of sugars in milk, even in the whey. You're still going to get those sugars where you get this little caramelized flavor that comes through on the cheese at the end as well. So it does stick to the bottom. It will stick to the bottom. So you want to make sure that you stir it every now and again just to make sure that it's okay. And you're all good. And this was the last of my whey going in. I now have a whey-free fridge and a whey-free kitchen. That's a lot of whey. The only thing I will say is that Bam came over to spend the day with me and he choked when he walked in the door. This is definitely a job you want to do with the door open or do outside. It does have a tendency to smell like baby milk that's suddenly got on your shoulder. It does have a tendency to do that, but it's all good. I didn't want this going on all night, so I switched it off at this point and decided to start again in the morning. Welcome to day 2. And as you can see, the whey and what are there of solids have kind of separated off. So I'm going to mix them up a little bit before I turn the slow cooker on, because I don't want the solids really settling on the base too much, because they stick and they will stick and they can catch and they can burn. So We still need to cook off a lot of that liquid, in fact most of that liquid, and off we go. It's day 2, round 2. Now a lot of my milk that is in here, a lot of the solids seem to be little round bubbles of solidified, I would imagine, cheese, to be honest. And when I've seen this on blogs etc. being made, it tends to be a lot smoother. I'm not that fussy, and this honestly is the first time I've ever made this, so I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm also not going to, you know, be too clinically upset about it if it goes horribly wrong, which, spoiler alert, doesn't. So yeah, at this point I'm just trying to make sure that there's no stuck bits on the bottom and that it heats up from cold in a good way, in a good balanced way. So you don't have it going from the bottom to the top. It's all going to, you know, just heat up. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. What the hell? What is going on? Who stole my words? Rude. It's now 3 hours later, and as you can see, a lot of that whey is cooked off. A lot of that whey is cooked off. Now this is the point where you're going to have to keep a little bit of an extra eye on it. Honestly, as you can see, the colour has darkened. That's the caramelization of the sugars in the solids, and it will get darker as we go, but you want to be very careful about what is catching on the base, and you're going to want to stir it a little bit more often. So while we're just stirring this up, I'm going to have a wee chat to you about what's happening on November the 2nd over on Jeni's Scratch Made Kitchen channel. She's having a giveaway for this collaboration of Crocktober 2024. And that's at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Whatever that is in your zone, just check it out and be aware that clocks are going back and forward and all sorts of weirdness at the moment and over the next 2 weeks. So, you know, just double check before, you know, all of that stuff. But yeah, so down below in the description there is a list of everyone who's participated in this collaboration. There's also a playlist over on Jeni's channel as well, where there is a link. So please do go check everyone out, because the more you watch, the more you comment. And if you leave a comment, you get to enter the competition and the giveaways. So, there you go. Have I finished stirring yet? Probably not. Now while this was starting to thicken and show signs of thickening, I was a little bit more careful about keeping on top of the stirring, as it was showing signs of sticking to the bottom. So I wanted to make sure that I got into all of the corners and covered all of the base, and was pretty thorough, to be honest. Now we're getting to the sticky end. Now this is where it's going to start spitting. And you want to be very careful at this point because it will spit. And I'm sitting here doing this voiceover and I am covered in little bits of flying cheese that have solidified on my shirt, and I've been picking off because I'm covered in it. I'm not going to lie to you. It went off like a mud pool at Ruapehu. I'm not going to lie. The other thing you want to remember is that this stuff is hot, and if it hits your skin, it's going to hurt. It's not just milk. It's not just hot milk. Hot milk, it has a lot of, at this point, the sugars are crystallizing. They are turning into caramel. That is what the dark color is, and it's hot sugar. So if you need to turn the temperature down a little bit just to get it off that heavy boil for a moment, while you go around and stir the base, then do that. Just take your time with it at this point, because this is the second day it's been going. If you're worried about a time crunch, you wouldn't be doing this. Let's be honest. Now 10 minutes later, I have discovered that there is quite a lot stuck to the base, so I decided to get my whisk out and give it a really good going over. I don't want that dairy and that caramelized dairy that's stuck there to burn, because it's going to really give the cheese a nasty, nasty flavour that it really doesn't need. So you wanted to absolutely make sure that you got all of the bits up, or as much as you possibly can. Take a good few minutes to do this, just to make sure. And if you need to turn down your slow cooker or crock pot down to low, so that you can do this without worrying about whether that stuff on the bottom is going to catch, then do that. Just take your time with it and turn it back up afterwards. I decided at this point that this is where I would add in the extra glass of milk. Now, traditionally you can add in a glass of milk or a glass of cream. I didn't have any cream, so milk it was. And you can do this at the point where it becomes like a soft caramel. That was pretty much the texture that I had. I may have gone a bit early, but honestly, it didn't make that much of a difference. And all it did actually do was made it a little smoother, which is fine. That's not a big deal. I think, you know, if your whey doesn't have a lot of the solid compound in it, still the milk or the cream will help a lot more with this process. Either way, we want to make sure that it's well mixed in, and it's, you know, it's well mixed in. So that's what you do. Mix it in. As you can see, this has actually gone a little bit smoother than it was. And I think that is very much down to the added milk that was in there. Whether that would have gone even smoother with cream, I can't tell you, because I haven't experimented with that yet. But maybe one day when the boys have forgiven me for the last 2 days, then maybe we'll give it a go. At this point though, the cheese has a consistency of a really decent bechamel sauce. Not a watery bechamel, but a really nice one that's quite smooth and creamy and, you know, nice. From that point, it doesn't take long. This is 10 minutes later, and we have a bubbling cauldron of very thick gloop. That's almost like a oatmeal consistency, I would say, personally. From this point, you are going to want to stir it pretty much constantly, because you don't want it sticking at all, and it will very, very quickly. It's up to you how brave you feel and how long you think you can leave it for. At this point, this is another 5 minutes later, and it is very thick. Now, I didn't think that there was much more liquid that I could get out of that. There may have been, I don't know. People have made this more often who are better at it than I have. Probably would be able to tell me that, you know, I've done the job of a 5-year-old, but, you know, I gave it a go. And yes, I wasn't very brave with it. I did kind of start pulling it out at this point. I wanted to make sure that the sides were all cleaned down, and that really there was no liquid that would show on the top of the cheese. If there is liquid in there to cook off, it will come up in the crevices, and there's steam, so yes, there's definitely still liquid there, but you know, it depends on how good you think you are at, you know, how much more you think you can get out of it. And I really wasn't confident enough to leave it go for much longer. I did push on for the next 10 minutes and then I decided to pull some out. Now there are two different ways of this being served and one of them is as a paste. So I felt that this was the right consistency for that. And I filled up 2 old little pots and put those to the side and kept stirring the cheese for another 5 minutes. Just to try and get whatever it was that I could possibly get back out of it, because the second way of this being set is as a set solid lump block, which you can apparently slices off. Now, due to time constraints, etc., that I had, I put it in a box. It's waiting to see if it's going to solidify into a block. I'm not going to be worried if it doesn't. This was a first attempt, and to be quite honest with you, I'm very pleased with the product that I did get. Now, my taste buds and my words for using that and describing that, I would have described the cheese like almost like a Vegemite toasty with a bit of a sweet kick, but I could also taste the lemon that I'd used in making the cheese, the other cheese to create the whey. So you could taste that. I would be very, very careful if you were using salt in your cheese making to make this, because that would concentrate quite a lot, so I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't use any whey that had been salted, because that would make this absolutely inedible. That is my opinion, and I've seen it written in other blogs and stuff where people have said that it's pretty inedible if it's made with salted whey. So yeah, so I just put this in an in a container. I've flattened it off. It's going to go in the fridge, and we're going to see if it actually solidifies enough to be able to slice. But we're not going to be able to see that in this video. You'll just have to look at a community post for that. But this was my first attempt at making Norwegian brown cheese, and I got to say, I'm not upset about it, you know. So don't forget to play with your food. Find new ways to use the things that you're not used to using, and you never know, you might find your brand new favourite food. See you later. Bye.